Hi, and welcome to Tech Leader TV. I'm your host, John Thomas Flynn, and this is our 9th season of TLTV, and we continue with a stellar lineup of topics and guests, a show that everyone's talking about, a live streaming video webcast and cable television program focusing on public sector information technology and the political landscape. We come to you today courtesy of our sponsors, Unisys, LexisNexis, Xerox, Dimension Data, Veeam, Comcast, Microsoft, Tanium, Kronos, Optum, Gigaman, and our newest premier sponsor, Sacramento-based Next Level, the Listen, Plan, and Deliver company, conveniently located near Ansel Hoffman Golf Course. And finally, Flynn Associates, a California-certified small business enterprise and trusted advisor for strategic IT business development, marketing, and solution services. And thanks for watching. The Tech Leader TV website continues to set our new audience records. We're reaching thousands of state IT decision makers and vendor partners who have recorded 250,000 page views the last month alone. We recorded 2 million views last year, and our goal is to double that in 2016. And we have a very special program today with our guest, Christopher Cruz, Chief Deputy Director of the Department of Technology. Before we get started and I introduce Chris and begin our conversation today, as usual, I'm requesting your indulgence to allow me to pontificate, if I may, on pressing issues of the day. And they are legion. Big changes at the Department of Technology leadership, challenges on the Medi-Cal case management project, ongoing security concerns, and so on. But at the same time, as we highlight just a few weeks ago with our guest, Franchise Tax Board's CIO, Kathy Kleek, there are great stories out there as well. Her agency has recovered nearly $5 billion in additional state tax revenue, all resulting from its massive tax system modernization project, Enterprise Data to Revenue, now in its 4th year of implementation. $5 billion, equal to or greater than the state's entire annual IT spending. And the most amazing thing about the EDR project is that the vendor has only been paid from recovered funds. If the system didn't work, no vendor payment. But Google it. Do you find that story in the LA Times? How about the Sacramento Bee or Silicon Valley's Mercury News? Nothing. Just FTB announcements and vendor press releases. The lack of coverage when the state does get IT right is pretty frustrating for the state workforce and, frankly, the entire IT community. But perhaps more importantly, as Kathy Kleek and I discuss, why not more of these performance-based contracts? Paying IT vendors for clear, identifiable financial performance improvements and cost savings or additional revenues like EDR should be a lot more common. What better way to avoid major project failures and the waste of hundreds of millions of dollars here and hundreds of millions of dollars there? Sure, it won't work everywhere, but with the state embarking on literally dozens of $100 million plus projects each year, surely there can be more than just one every 10 years like EDR. Now, I think it's important that sound, consistent IT project management oversight and development methodology be rigorously applied. But with regard to the last point, Agile certainly has a place in the state's software development repertoire. But such methodologies like Agile and contingency or performance-based contracting are not mutually exclusive. In fact, now, when a new IT project is being considered for approval, its accompanying business case always identifies its return on investment. Clearly, if this ROI through efficiencies and/or increased revenue savings is real, then why not have the vendor agree to reimbursement accordingly? Sure beats risking a multi-hundred-million-dollar loss from another failed IT project, huh? Well, as usual on Tech TV, we're going to do our best to keep the spotlight on the state's management of its annual multi-billion-dollar IT investment to make government more efficient, effective, and secure. And hopefully we'll have a little fun and keep your interest along the way. Our motto is simple. As I like to say, California can always do better. Let's begin the journey now with our discussion on technology, government, politics, and as I like to say, other unnatural acts. I'll be right back with our guests in just a moment, and we'll get started. Hi, and welcome back to Tech Leader TV. As I mentioned, our guest today is Cruz, who is the Chief Deputy Director at the Department of Technology, appointed just shy of a year ago, as a matter of fact. Previously, Chris was CIO at the Department of Healthcare Services. He was CIO at Department of Food and Ag. He also served time there as an IT manager. But I believe he started his state service at the Department of Justice and also spent some time, as we used to call it in Boston, spent some time in the dreaded private sector as well. Cruz, welcome to Tech Leader TV.
Thank you, John.
Welcome back, I should say. Third appearance, as I recall.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll maybe talk on that contingency-based contracting again, because I know you, as we talked a little bit of it, were involved in that with some of the Medi-Cal discussions in the past. But, you know, there's really like an 800-pound gorilla in the room. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and a lot of people have asked me about, and I'd really like to get involved and get right to this. So let me give the first question. No, I can't say that one. Okay, here we go. Now, this is thoughtful and provocative, insightful, and I want a clear answer. So, Chief Deputy Cruz, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay, I thought we'd get into this with a little humor, as usual. But let me ask you the first real question here. We talked a little bit about the budget and the organization. So tell us a little bit about the Department of Technology, you know, your organization as Chief Deputy for Operations, and we'll get into some initiatives after that. But tell us a little bit about the organization.
Sure. As Chief Deputy Director of Operations, that encompasses 8 different distinctive divisions. Obviously, we have the State Data Center that's under my leadership, Customer Delivery Division, Electronic Services, the new Office of Digital Innovation and Civic Engagement. We have also, too, Broadband and Digital Literacy, the Office of basically Professional Development, and our Enterprise Project Management Office. So that really encompasses a lot of diversification across our portfolio. And really what we are is a customer-driven business. It's a cross-cutting, customer-centric organization for the customers that we serve to bring business value. And I think that's really important as we move forward in some of the initiatives that we're going to talk to you about today.
You know, one of the things I've never been quite clear about, so you've got the department, you're within the Government Operations Agency. So what's the relationship there? How does the AIO, how does that work? AIO and the director, et cetera, how does that work?
Well, we report within the Government Operations Agency. We're one of many departments that report to Maribel Badger, our secretary. There is an AIO for Government Operations, it's Andrew Armani. And so basically his responsibility is to roll up and administer policy and provide directives to the CIOs under the government operations area. That is rolled up into an enterprise governance structure that we have within operations. So as we prioritize enterprise initiatives, Andrew plays that particular role to report down to those CIOs.
Okay.
So there is some standardization within our governance structure.
Does he have authority as regards to the director of the Department of Technology, too, the state CIO?
No, his authority is different. We have an enterprise organization within our directorate, and that's basically ITEC, which is our IT Executive Council. And Andrew is a part of that IT Executive Council with 8 to 9 other AIOs from the respected agencies within the state.
We wanted to talk about some of the current initiatives. Certainly one of the biggest, you got Agile, Fiscal, and CalCloud, I think, are some of the issues that come up more and more. First of all, describe what is CalCloud now? Because originally it was just that IBM contract. Now I think it's broader, right?
Right. So what we call CalCloud now is more of a hybrid cloud, as I'd like to rebrand it as CalCloud 2.0. When I first took this job, we came in and we re-strategized really the future directive for CalCloud, how we were defining an adoption strategy, how we wanted to become more vendor agnostic in terms of introducing other cloud services into our portfolio. So that being said, we introduced what was called vendor-hosted subscription solutions, which is software as a service and also platform where it makes sense, into the cloud portfolio.
Okay.
So today we have infrastructure as a service on-prem, which is our partnership with IBM, and then we have the vendor-hosted solution and subscriptions area.
Okay.
Within our infrastructure services area today, we have 31 departments that utilize CalCloud on-prem, over 127 applications and approximately 125 servers. So we continue to see more adoption as we've re-strategized CalCloud, as we renegotiated the contract with the vendor to bring the rates down, as we've enhanced our levels of security, and also looked at leveraging lessons learned in terms of identifying all the enhancements with CalCloud. So as of March 1st, the system is now in maintenance and operations, having met all of those contractual obligations with IBM.
Well, let me ask you now, as I understand with the IBM piece, Is that a zero-based project? I mean, how do they get reimbursed?
It's a subscription-based service, so it's pay-as-you-go. So it's based on utilization as folks sign up for that particular service. So that's how the contract is structured.
And I think at the vendor forum recently, you mentioned $40 million, I think, is so far that's been spent on this.
Right.
But
and
most of that is the CES mail?
Yeah, most of that was CS mail. At least 32 to 34 million was a prior contract that was convened in 2010.
Okay.
So yeah, most of that is CS mail. Really, the 6 to 7 million has been the spend on CalCloud, both within infrastructure as a service and also on the vendor hosted side.
Okay.
So that is a point of clarification.
Okay. I seem to recall, and maybe this is before the renegotiate with IBM, that the goal was to have 500 servers moved over to IBM.
Right.
You've got now, what, 126, did you say?
Yeah, we have 126 servers. We're projecting 273 servers with current workload that we have moving forward that we'll be working on over the next 6 to 9 months. But really what we wanted to do is not really focus on the number of services, but focus on the number of quality migrations, levels of complexities in systems, and make sure that we're doing the job right to reinforce the state's footprint. So we're taking a little different approach on mass volume versus numbers and quality versus quantity.
Okay, all right. So moving away from the platform is the infrastructure side. Looking at the vendor-hosted side, talk a little bit about that. I'm kind of confused. I went to a vendor forum a couple of months ago, and there was talk of 5 areas to initialize. Where does that stand now?
Yeah, well, we provided last week, we had a vendor forum, and one of the things I should mention, we are doing more outreach to the vendor community, and we're currently scheduling vendor forums on a quarterly basis so we can address these areas of concerns and also be transparent about where we're at in terms of progress on the vendor-hosted side.
Is this just for CalCloud, or is this
This is for CalCloud, and we also brought CalNet 3 into the process as well, because again, CalNet 3 cross-references some of the cloud activities, so we want to be clear with the vendor community on what contracts they can address and what contracts that they can utilize moving forward. So getting back to your question on vendor-hosted solutions, we currently have some areas. We have Salesforce CRM, which is customer relationship management. We have Clarity, which is a project and portfolio management tool by CA. And we have Remedy on Demand, which is a service desk tool that we currently have within that particular tool set. We've also too, proud to acknowledge that we now have Microsoft Office 365 that's part of the vendor-hosted solution family. Okay. We leverage the Riverside EULA agreement with DGS as a master contract through SLP. And we're beginning to sell and offer Office 365 services in terms of, as well as Microsoft Government Cloud and Skype to the community.
Okay.
So that's significant in moving our email footprint forward. So getting back to the 5 areas that we originally focused on, we found in our original area we talked about collaboration tools. But after going back and leveraging what CalNet 2 and CalNet 3 provided, we decided that those tools and services are also provided as part of that contract, so there's no need to have a level of redundancy in our contracts area.
Okay.
Our HR tools and our learning management tools were part of that original 5. We're now partnering with our control agencies, Department of Human Resources and State Controller's Office on those, given that they're the control agency entity, about how we want to lay out and structure those future contracts to ensure we're doing the right things and laying out an enterprise approach for HR within the state.
Okay. Yeah, because I seem to recall that the HR tools bid was pulled back recently, and that would be the result of what you're talking about.
So we are working on that right now. We've convened a governance committee made up of those control agencies and other departments to look at next steps and how we want to, recapture that before we send out another RFP.
So it's a very dynamic program. In other words, you're going to keep rolling out new as the departments demand it. How's the vendor community accepting this? There was a lot of griping, from the get-go on this, because they didn't win the IBM contract, obviously. But since then, have the catcalls quieted down, or is there still?
Well, I think the vendor community has been very positive, but again, as I like to say, John, this is a public-private partnership, and I think we've been very transparent and upfront in terms of the communication and the priorities that we want to go in, and how the vendor community can play an integral role moving forward. And I know you mentioned a couple of other areas that we're looking at. We have electronic and digital signature moving forward. We're working with the Secretary of State's office on the statutory language, and once that's in place, we're going to let that RFP out in the street as well and qualify that as one of our vendor-hosted solutions.
Okay, and that would be what time frame?
Right now, we're looking hopefully by June or July in terms of getting the policy language codified, and then once that happens, we can let that. Okay. We also have a backup recovery and services RFP that we're going to let out as well, and the time frame for that is May, June.
So that's going to be an
industry.
RFP. Will that be for cloud?
That'll be
related?
for cloud, vendor-hosted
Okay.
solutions. What that is for backup recovery and storage
Okay.
to allow vendors to come in and provide that level of service. We have many customers in the state who have made that request upon the Department of Technology, and we think by rolling up these components within an enterprise approach, the state will create more efficiencies and effectiveness in how it manages its IT infrastructure.
What are the other initiatives? I went through the BCPs. I didn't see anything in there specifically for the Department of Technology, but there's always things going on, I know that. So why don't you talk a little bit about anything else that you'll be involved in this coming year?
Well, I think one of the areas, too, I want to highlight is our new Digital Innovation and Technology Engagement Office. This really looks at modular development and a new path forward for the state and how it's going to do system development lifecycle and work on modular development from a coding perspective.
And this is under which division?
So this is under our new Technology Engagement Office. This is Scott Gregory, who's our
Okay.
Deputy Director over that. He was originally the Office of the Geographic Information Officer. So we've since rebranded that office to look at more modular development and really
Okay.
creating a sandbox within CalCloud that's called an innovation lab. And so we're very much in the
Okay.
infancy stage within this innovation lab, but I think the significance is we want to understand how you architect, how you secure, and how you write and develop policy around modular development.
Right.
So we're very much aligned with a new demonstration project, CWSNS, to ensure that whatever we develop within the policy is consistent and complementary with what's being developed in that particular area.
Just out of curiosity, and I'm a firm believer in trying different approaches given the state's track record, going back even when I was CIO. It's always good to look at new and different methodologies. But why did they pick out such a large, I mean, that's going to be $1 billion project probably when it's done, CWS, Child Welfare System.
Well, I think they feel like that they can modular it and they can phase that process out through a modular development area. And I know they've been consulting with some folks in the private sector, and I think that there's been some victories in other areas and components of the nation that prove those types of things can be done.
No, I
So
think they
that that's
can.
the approach that they looked at.
I think just but the state jumping into it without the skill set in the workforce and taking on such a huge, I mean, that project must have spent $2 billion. You know, when I was CIO, it was 300 or 400 million. So.
Right. So I've been in the
Huge.
Health and Human Services Agency, but I think it's the right path forward and the right step forward for the state to effectively utilize and reuse code,
Yeah.
and reuse code and finish it off, and that way we're not in a long ubiquitous life cycle of these
Yeah.
large system integration projects. So I think it's a best practice and it's a best path forward for what the state's trying to accomplish.
And speaking of that, healthcare services, obviously the Medi-Cal case management system has run into some problems. But I actually remember a year ago they were going to move to agile development for that project. So what happened, do you think?
I'm not sure. I've been gone for over a year, so I'm not sure where they changed their scope of the level
Somehow
of
they'll
effort.
try to blame you, though, Chris.
But
you
some
know
more
that.
data integrity and program integrity I know is really important to healthcare services, and I think they continue to beat down that path, and they're very successful in that effort.
Well, that's a very exciting project. You know, I tried to get that jump started back when I was CIO 20 years ago and couldn't get Kim Belshea couldn't get it convinced her that it was the way to go with all the fraud that was in that program, and it was probably $25 billion now, and I think it's up to $90 billion a year, Medi-Cal. Jeez. And there's plenty. That'll be an interesting project to watch because it could set the stage for a lot of other ones, and hopefully other projects, similar projects, will be considered on a performance-based contingency procurement or payroll pay as you go as you would.
So one of the things, John, I'd like to get back to is you talked about this new Technology and Digital Innovation Office. So with the other areas that we're working on in addition to modular development is we're really encouraging civic engagement and eliciting partners from Coders of America and other folks to come in. In fact, we're hiring 5 new state staff that have Ruby on Rails and other new modular development skills that can be part of this development. And I think that's significant for the state because it invites a virtual workforce and it's starting to give us the capabilities and competency to fill those positions with the right types of skill sets and the millennial folks that are coming in. I'd also like to make mention is one of the areas that we're partnering with government operations on is the new CA.data open data portal. And so that portal is going to go live in June of this year. And that's really through a federated structure that we're rolling up data sets from other data portals in town like Health and Human Services and others. So you have a one-size-fits-all for a common data approach. So that's going live. That will be overlaid in the new ca.gov, which is the governor's website that will be going live here the first week of May as well. We're restructuring that side to have a common look and feel. So if you're in Los Angeles and you go to the CA.gov site, you'll get a Los Angeles perspective and view.
Oh, no kidding.
So it's very diversified. It's based on Google Analytics and some other things that are navigational type things that I think will help the state be more successful in communicating and doing outreach to our constituents.
One of the other areas we wanted to talk about was security, as it's been so much in the news lately, not just in California, but around the country, around the world for that matter. OTEC, or your organization, has its own security office, I'm assuming. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, part of our security office is ensuring that we have the necessary safeguards around the state's data center. You know, we are the gatekeepers for data that comes in. Most of the mission-critical information that's stored is stored in our data center, which is a Tier 3 data center that has the highest levels of physical security and also enhanced levels of security with CalCloud and some of our other lines of business. So, you know, we're vigilant about security. In fact, one of the things we're doing right now, we have a security enhancement project going on that we're looking at enhancing our subscription-based services that we have with vendors and taking into consideration our own personal staff. So we can address issues, you know, with degradation and other areas of capability enhancement. So having the necessary tools in place will help us dashboard the data and identify issues more efficiently and effectively. So we're taking data very seriously. We've had a couple of audits by the Social Security Administration that just ended up in March of 2016 that found no deficiencies with the data center and how we manage data. All of our people have background checks.
That's good news. That's really good news.
That manage data within our organization from a physical security perspective. And also, too, we've just completed an IRS audit as well that found no deficiencies. So I think those levels of certification at those highest levels of conformance and compliance, given that we have federal data that are stored in our systems, shows the commitment of the data center in terms of our levels of security and our reinforcement and what we're doing with security next practices. So next steps really is we would like to reinforce and enhance our levels of security, and eventually that will lead to a security operations center. We'll have people that actually manage those types of things and work with our partners from the Department of Military and Cal OES and Highway Patrol on incident response and how those issues get mitigated appropriately.
The audits by the Social Security Administration and the IRS, so Clean Bill of Health came out. I'm sure there were some suggestions, but overall...
Overall, no deficiencies were found.
No deficiencies. Well, that's impressive. That's something you should... Well, that's what Tech Leader TV is for those success stories.
Yeah, I also wanted to highlight FedRAMP. I know that FedRAMP...
I had a question about that. Go ahead.
FedRAMP has been a big part of our
Tell us what it is first for
moving forward.
audience.
So FedRAMP is basically the highest level of security that you can gain within an IT infrastructure and system. So
in the federal
government space. We think that's important, again, since we have a lot of federal clients that use the data center, and that we wanted to make sure CalCloud provided the highest level of security safeguards as a way to bring in folks into our system. So really FedRAMP, as we're currently with CalCloud, we're adhering to the FedRAMP framework. We did apply to become the first state to go through an application process. We've been working with FedRAMP over the last 6 months to determine what that criteria is. FedRAMP has since changed that criteria, and so we're just trying to determine what the next steps are. And part of that is we're committed to bringing in a third party to validate that we're meeting and adhering to that framework and validating all the other security measures that we have. So that's on the agenda and scope in the next couple of months to get that done. And look at that as a long-term process for, you know, achieving FedRAMP compliance.
Great. Next is the network, CJIN and Barbara Garrett and all that group. Tell us what's going on there.
Well, actually, lots going on in CJIN. One of the areas that we're really working arduously on that I think has significant impacts to the state is the Scenic Network. The Scenic Network basically connects the K through 12 and other educational institutions and universities into the statewide CJIN network. And why that's significant is now we can share services over a common network and bring down costs of infrastructure. And this is something that hasn't been done before that's really significant to bring all of us to an enterprise standard in the state. And we see this as value because, once again, volume-based pricing is very important in the state. As we bring more customers into our CJIN network and Scenic, we can drop pricing and distribute that in terms of cost of our customer base. So not only is it more efficient and effective on how we utilize wide area network technology, but we can bring the costs down rather than having organizations running and managing their own silos.
Good. Well, as a matter of fact, there are some new developments with CalNet 3. You want to talk a little bit about those? There's a refresh going on, and now...
So on April 7th, we announced a refresh of CalNet 3 through eProcure, which is running on our CalCloud environment right now on the Metro Ethernet and Category 5 areas for managed internet services. So we are trying to, again, listening to our customers, listening to the vendor communities, listed those recommendations and ensured that those services are available. I think the other significant area too is adding Category 10, which is satellite communication services, which brings this also into our CalNet 3 process to make it easier for those folks to do business with the state of California. And that's going to be released on April 25th.
Okay. It's interesting because the Ethernet piece, I think it's Category 3, this right now, as I understand it, there's like Integra and CenturyLink and AT&T, but this potentially will open it up to a lot more vendors, different vendors. Traditionally, this has been the telcos jurisdiction, but now we could see a lot of other companies moving in there, Comcast, maybe even Google, right?
That's correct. It's opening up vendor competition and capabilities and allowing them to sell services through CalNet 3 and even cloud services where there's collaboration areas. So it's going to make us more efficient, and it gives the customers, a better portfolio to look at in terms of how to bring business value to their customers.
Right, and I guess the Category 5 is which is the managed internet services. Won't that also open the door for CalCloud opportunities to move departments over?
Yeah, it'll increase more opportunities not only at the state level, but the county, cities, other municipality levels. And really, again, opening up what I call shared services across the state, not just for state government, but across our whole municipalities and other areas of jurisdiction, and also, too, within areas that are impacted, that don't have wide area networks, that don't have broadband and capabilities. This will allow us, to provide the necessary bandwidth into those areas as well, which is significant.
Okay.
And that's something else that we're working on with some of our partners in Scenic.
Right. Other question was about you mentioned it earlier, about the enterprise mail system. Where is all that now? I know there's talk of a rebid before, but I think things have changed in the last 3 or 4 months.
Right. So what we did is basically Department of General Services had an ongoing contract negotiation going on with Riverside to leverage the Riverside MELA agreement, which is an SLP contract. And that was to provide
a lot of acronyms there, Chris.
Yeah, so it's a user license agreement, and it's a licensing agreement that Microsoft uses with the County of Riverside. DGS had discussions with the County of Riverside and engaged them to leverage that contract vehicle based on the SaaS terms and conditions that DGS governs as a procurement body. So we leveraged that procurement agreement with DGS and partnered to introduce Office 365 products into the state. So we didn't have to go back out and do another procurement. As you're aware, there was a competitive procurement that was out on the street 2 years ago by my predecessor. And so it was determined at that time that vendors couldn't meet the specific requirements. So that procurement was pulled off the street. We extended the current CS contract and then decided to leverage the Microsoft MELA contract, which gives us access to Office 365. And this also includes Microsoft Government Cloud. And today we're transitioning, and we had our first transition today with Cal OES, of moving folks off the California Enterprise System into the Microsoft Government Cloud. So over the next 12 to 15 months, our goal is by July of 2017 for CES customers to have them completely migrated into the Microsoft Government Cloud off of CES.
Okay, that was my next question.
That contract ends in October of next year, the CES contract.
Okay.
So we have to be off of that platform and migrated into an additional platform.
So it'll be just a single email system.
Right, so we'll have a single email system for the state.
Oh my God, it'll be a party time, huh?
Yeah, well, it'll involve 120,000 customers. We're also allowing those who use CA Mail on-prem at the data center to also migrate to the Microsoft Government Cloud. So we'll have almost 200,000 boxes, hopefully by the end of 2017, within a common infrastructure that gives us the highest levels of security and safeguards, given Microsoft Government Cloud is FedRAMP compliant, CGIS compliant.
Okay. One of the things before all the cloud came in 3 or 4 years ago, one of the biggest things over at the data center in terms of innovation and change was the federated co-location and all that. Where is that now with the cloud initiatives?
Well, as we migrate and look at emerging and adaptive technologies, we are also looking at our current lines of business at the data center. So today we still have 45 customers that provide what's called tenant managed services. So what we're really doing is leasing, in essence, floor space. They still manage their own networks, the extension of their own networks and data centers. In addition to that, we also have the City and County of Los Angeles that are in our TMS environment, and the City and County of San Francisco. So we are a statewide data center and attracting those services. But really what our plans are and what we're looking at, John, is we're also going to survey our customers to ensure that the appropriate levels of security within those networks are maintained and managed. And if they are good fits, we're moving into cloud environments into the future. So that survey we're going to disseminate to our community here in the next week or two.
Okay, great. Let's move over to another one of your divisions, the Project Management Office. Relatively new. Talk about how that was created and the differentiation between that and the consulting and planning and the project oversight division, because it seems like there's some confusion.
Sure.
At least in my case.
Really, the project management office, I think, was developed to look at, one, looking at the project management framework. And we had a current CAPMM methodology that's been in place for some time. So one of the things that office is doing is replacing that CA project management methodology with this new California project management framework. And really what these are guiding principles, and guiding principles that are intuitive. We're coming out with a new website the first week of May that really walks our users through this new and intuitive process. So if you just need a communication plan, then you can go right to that communication plan in terms of the tabs. So it's user intuitive, and it's really efficient and effective. Now that being said, we vetted that with the community. We brought in AIOs and CIOs and their subject matter expertise throughout the state to make sure that, one, we're listening to our customers, and two, addressing where their needs are to ensure that gaps are being mitigated appropriately. So that's part of the project management's directive, is to create project management guidelines, create, looking at experience in terms of project managers and how they're brought in, to create a framework that makes sense based on where we're going, to really look at long-term agile development as a component of project management, and also business process reengineering. The last area really is to look at how we manage projects, that we can provide project managers to those organizations that don't have that core competency or expertise within their area. And so that's the other component of the project management is providing, project management office is providing. This is something that previous CIO brought into the organization, and we have a project management officer that's in place, and really it's focused on lessons learned and best practices in the community. Continue to move that forward.
Now, you've mentioned the advisory council. Is that something within this office, or is it independent?
Well, the vendor advisory council is independent. This is something that we want to do as part of the operational governance structure, but we will look at leveraging this advisory council in terms of other core competency areas as we move it forward. I really want to look at the state's IT infrastructure right now and how we communicate with our vendor community, how we communicate with our AIOs and other CIOs from the cities, counties, and municipalities, to use this as a think tank, so that we can look at common processes and common standards as we move forward as a state, just like we're doing on the wide area network side.
Okay. How does a vendor get involved with this
So
council?
one of the things that we're looking at right now is looking at going out to the associations. I'm in the process of working with our public information officer to develop some criteria. I'm going to move that over to the associations, looking at ITAPs and some of those folks in CompTIA to look at that and help me make recommendations on who should be a part of that. What I'm thinking, it should be composed of small, medium, and large organizations, so we have a subset of how we want to look at things, and then how we want the criteria to be in terms of bringing up ideas and recommendations. This got started based on input I got from the cloud process and having these forums and meeting with the legislature on ways that we can open up cloud and open up competition so it's fair and equitable. So I think this is a good idea to ensure that communications is synchronized and streamlined as we move forward with these statewide initiatives.
Well, nobody should complain about that. If there's anything vendors have always complained about is access and availability and getting FaceTime, as you would with various decision makers in the state. What about some of your other divisions you haven't mentioned? You got GIS, you've got customer delivery, professional development, et cetera. Talk a little bit about those.
So I mentioned GIS now as our new innovation and engagement office, so we transitioned that. So the GEO officer is now over that new office. So we're folding in geographic information officers into the new ca.gov website as well.
Okay.
So one of the areas, too, I want to highlight is my customer delivery division. They're playing a very important job because they're doing customer outreach. We have account managers that are assigned to state departments, they're assigned to cities and counties and other municipalities to talk about all the activities and business ventures that we have. So they're out there really selling and doing business development for us to talk about these new services and why these organizational entities should leverage these services.
It's always probably been the greatest challenge for the data centers, going back to my time, was the complaints about rates, and that certainly is part of the whole customer delivery, customer relations aspect. How do you get through that thorny mess?
Well, one of the areas that we're looking at, and I go back to this governance structure that we're putting together, is we are revisiting the rates and how we can bring those rates down. Part of the way the budget is this budget's been in place for 23 odd years. And so it's mainly around when we had more legacy systems and we didn't have the diversification in our lines of business today. So we are looking at our rates and how we can reduce those rates where it makes sense. And those are some of the things that we're convening right now, a study. We have a business process improvement study we're currently doing at the department that looks at the integrated and functional lines of business, and part of that is looking at the financial management aspects of our budget.
Are you talking about the Department of Technology?
I'm talking about the Department of Technology.
The whole department. Okay.
Yeah, there's a state, obviously the CIO has a state strategic plan. We're looking internally how we integrate the lines of business between the policy side of the shop and the operations side of the shop. One of the deliverables is looking at the financial management capability moving forward and how we should be funding new initiatives and funding existing lines of business.
Is there an IT bond on the horizon, like we had in Massachusetts?
Not yet, no.
I don't think that'll happen. We thought about it back then, but it's a tough way to go. It's, with legislative scrutiny, et cetera.
Right, so that's what the Customer Delivery Division does. They're also the arm for projects, new initiatives that come through our customer side to make sure that there's alignment. They're looking at our new service request process and implementing tools to make sure that every incident or every area of concentration is identified and that the appropriate person is identified within our organization to manage that risk or solve that problem. So it's a collaborative partnership within our organization, and CDD plays a very important role in making that happen.
Yeah, I would think it's a tough job, right? But it's interesting that so your new initiatives are now funneling through that organization as well.
So single point of contact that leads to some standardization. Excuse me.
Professional development. Christy Borshin.
Right.
What's going on there?
Well, a lot's going on in that particular area. We have ITLA 23 coming out right now. The ITLA 23 class is focused on mentoring program to make sure we have a mentorship program in place.
ILA
for the state.
is?
Information Technology Leadership Academy.
Help yourself.
So, excuse me, did some water. And so that's moving forward. There's two areas that the Leadership Academy is focused on. One is a statewide mentoring program to make sure that we have a mentor and a mentee so people at the leadership level can mentor middle management, lower level management folks to make sure they understand policies, how to act strategically and be tactical in these positions, and make the appropriate business case to represent their directorate or agency. So that's one component of that. And then we have our security program that they're going to put a security best practices playbook in place. So we can employ that and look at templates moving forward to make incident response and reporting more efficient and effective.
How does that mentor program, how is that going to be, how does that work? Is it,
so what it
people
is,
sign up for it?
So
or?
what it is, you sign up for it, and right now we're looking at state people, you sign up for it, they're creating a database, and that database will have access to people that if you need a mentor or mentee that you can go contact that person. And so part of that is the mentors and mentees agree to participate in the program.
And the mentors are not just at Department of Technology, or are they just Department of Technology?
They're actually throughout the state, cities and counties as well if need be.
Oh, that's
so we think that diversification is very important, and that we need to train our up-and-comers to understand what it takes to do these positions and be successful.
Be interesting to cross-fertilize that with your vendor advisory council someday.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, at least annual meetings, if nothing else. I can imagine with one of the issues that came up when we were talking with Kathy Kleek, the CIO from Franchise Tax Board a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the whole issue of legacy mainframe support. That must, you must have that headache 10 times what the FTB has.
Well, I think, we have multiple mainframes in our environment. I think one of the things that we're trying to look at long term is what parts of the mainframe can we modernize and what are good candidates for CalCloud. So as you have middleware tools that you bring into an organization, you can recirculate those amongst your systems. And that way organizations can share in the cost of those. So that's an area that we're looking at as part of our roadmap focus within the State Data Center. I also wanted to mention our e-services organization, because we do a lot of mobile apps. We also write mobile apps and provide mobile services to other state governments. Today we have a complete mobile app page that's covered with cities and counties and other constituents that can publish their mobile apps on a single launch page within the Department of Technology's website. And why is that significant? 13.5 million people get their services through a mobile phone or smartphone. And the more that we can make those services available on those types of phones, including application systems, the more we're going to provide efficient and effective services. And I think that's also very important. And then e-services also manages our governor's websites and to make sure that any new websites, the drought website or flood websites are repurposed. And so that's part of that organization's mission as well, to ensure that we're being responsive and providing those operational services on behalf of the governor. And I think that's real significant. Also, too, I wanted to highlight our broadband organization and digital literacy led by Adelina Zendejas. We are on the Broadband Council, And part of broadband is ensuring that, working with a tribal organization to
What is the
ensure.
Broadband Council?
So what the Broadband Council does is look at telecommunications.
I mean, is it
communication.
national or is this the state?
It is a state broadband council across the state to ensure that we're proliferating the correct services moving forward and that we're
Okay.
partnering amongst our other jurisdictions to provide, again, communication to those underrepresented areas. So I think that that's really important in terms of move forward. We're also working with the FirstNet Responder Network with Cal OES to ensure that we have wireless and broadband capability for that in the event that there's not only a statewide emergency, but a nationwide emergency as well. So those are efficiencies that I think help us move our bandwidth and broadband not only from a state perspective, but into a national perspective that we can leverage some of the federal government's broadband capabilities.
Well, there's a lot going on. Obviously, you're one of the reasons we'd like to have an hour show, but we don't. But you covered a lot of things, and before we go, I would like to ask you if there's any particular awards or citations that the department is particularly happy about. You might share that with us.
Right. One of the things we're looking at, obviously, right now is we're applying for the Best of Web, so the new ca.gov website that's being rolled out next month. We're submitting for Best of Web within
Submitting
that.
to?
We're submitting to the Center for Digital Government. We're also submitting for the Digital Government Achievement and Awards for Digital Government. And for NASIO, we're creating an enterprise portfolio of all of our projects that we want to highlight in the state for the NASIO midterm awards that are coming up in September.
Okay.
So one of those is CalCloud and some of the open data portals that we're doing. So we think we have a nice portfolio of rewards and significant accomplishments that we made in the state, and we're happy to promote those because we think that addresses industry best practices and lessons learned, that California is a leader and an innovator in technology.
Right, and certainly, there was an article today in the Bee about the transparency or lack thereof in the state, and certainly from the discussion of the open portal and things like that, hopefully California is moving in that direction. And with fiscal, coming down the pike, more of that financial information may be available not only internally, but to folks out in the field that are policy and budget walks that really love to delve into that, as I know I do.
And that's our goal, really, to provide that platform for that transparent and make data more readily available and efficient.
Yeah. And it's great that you're going after these awards. I've always felt very strongly that the ability to actually get recognition for the work that's done, because like I said, that I just shake my head when I think about the poor EDR project, billions of dollars recovered, and it gets no publicity at all.
Well, hopefully it does through these processes. We'd like to see those highlighted.
Well, that's what Tech Leader TV is right there, okay?
Great.
It's great to have you on the show. I can't, as I said, you've been here 3 times. I know we'll have you back for a 4th one day. Folks, that concludes our show for today. I want to thank everybody for watching and supporting us. Your comments are always welcome at our website. We print all of them, actually. We may have to censor a word or two here or there, but we appreciate you visiting. Keep it up. Our special thanks to our guest today, Cruz, the Chief Deputy Director at the Department of Technology. Raised some interesting questions. Hopefully we'll get a chance to elaborate a little bit in our reception afterwards. Next show is June 2nd with Karen Johnson from the Department of Healthcare Services and CIO Barney Gomez. Should be exciting. A lot going on over there, too. So join us next time. You can also catch us on Channel 17. We've got a great, the show is not only broadcast live, but it's also rebroadcast video on demand probably by tomorrow on our website, techleader.tv, but it's also available to watch on Channel 17 into the weekend. Check with your local listings and let us know how we're doing things. And listen, taxes are due, but you know what? They're not due tomorrow, April 15th. They're due on Monday, unless you're in Massachusetts, Tuesday. But that's a different story. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for coming. And thank you, sir.